Perhaps the next Conservative leader, and a very good morning to you. And also a few weeks back you were on this programme telling me you thought around about 5 cabinet ministers would go for the Leave side. Well, Mystic Fox.
Well, if you're very good, I might give you some of the lottery numbers for next week. Yes, I mean, I think it was always very clear that some ministers simply would not be able to tolerate whatever deal was reached, because they regarded it as such an important issue of tremendous substance that they were long committed. Michael Gove being one of them, Chris Grayling being another, of those who just fundamentally believed that Britain would be better off outside the EU, whatever the terms of the renegotiation.
You must be disappointed about the likes of Sajid Javid not coming across. I mean, your Antane must have told you that he was, at the very least, sitting on the fence.
Yes, he wasn't one of my 5, so I wasn't that surprised in the end. But of course, you know, we're all still friends, and we'll work together for after the referendum for what's best for the country. But this is a judgment that we have to take, a very profound judgment about our constitutional future as a country. And I think that one of the reasons that I think that, I know you've been having a lot of this debate, and I'm not privy incidentally to this, but one of the reasons I think that Boris Johnson will choose to campaign for the out side, in the Leave side in the referendum, is this issue of sovereignty. Because I think for a lot of people that we're looking to see, you know, where does the power ultimately lie to make our laws? And sovereignty is about who has precedence in terms of the law. And the agreement that was reached, and I hate to sound technical about this, but the agreement that was reached on so-called ever closer union was an agreement between the heads of government. That does not outweigh treaty. The European Court of Justice will ultimately look at treaty and say that is what actually will make it happen. Now, we may get...
We know about the Mayor of London's concerns about
that particular issue.
He's voiced them in the House of Commons, though. But what are your contacts with him?
Oh, just like many of my other colleagues, I'm very friendly with them. I'm having dinner with them later this week. So there's nothing remarkable about all of this. But I think it is...
But you know, just on his decision, would it be a big surprise to you if he does not support the Leave campaign?
Yes, I'd be surprised. Because I think it is all about this point of sovereignty. And the Prime Minister says Britain is now free from ever closer union. I don't think that stands up to legal scrutiny, because I think that the European Court will still say the agreement you reached this week says it's in accordance with EU treaties. We're not getting any treaty change. The only way you can actually change the treaty is through the EU treaty amendment procedure. That didn't happen, and that means the European Court will look at what the ministers said this week, the heads of government, but they do not have to take it into account. And for many Conservatives, that will be the crucial point, because it means we ultimately do not make our laws. They're determined overseas.
But, I mean, this question's got to be asked about the Conservative Party. If you do get Boris Johnson taking on the sitting Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister of the day, this is going to be like the political version of one of those superhero movies, or Godzilla versus King Kong, where they fight themselves across the major cities of the world and leave them all destroyed. And you end up with your party in tatters. A decision has been made about the European Union, but one of them presumably must fall.
Well, I don't go back to this personality argument. You know, I completely
but they're such big beasts.
Well, I completely respect what the Prime Minister was trying to do. He was trying to get a better deal that would enable us to stay within the European Union. That's not what I wanted in the first place. I wanted to leave the European Union. But for me, what was interesting about that was that the process actually became the story. That we had a British Prime Minister going around with what I described as the political begging bowl, asking lots of small countries that we actually subsidise through our contributions to the EU, if it was okay for Britain to change some of our welfare laws. I don't think we should have to do that. And that is my fundamental principle. And I think that the arguments need to stay on the substance. We must get away from, if you don't mind me saying, the Westminster bubble portraying politics as entertainment. We need to get away from it.
It's not entertainment, because it's such an important issue, and it's about people who articulate the arguments. And you know, the Prime Minister is the best one to articulate the argument in terms of the renegotiation that he's been privy to.
But he won't be the only person.
People like yourself and Boris Johnson are very, very qualified to talk to us about issues of sovereignty and finance.
And there are many other people outside politics who will take a view on these and who need to be listened to. People who are involved in our security arrangements, in defence, in foreign policy. They all need to be heard. And what I'm really saying is I don't really think it should be turned into a personality contest, one against another.
It is indeed about the issues, but it's also about that leadership side of things. And if you get the result you want, would you really have confidence in the Prime Minister as the man who wanted to see the opposite result, then leading all that technical process of taking the UK out of the EU? Do you not think that his heart wouldn't really be in it?
Well, the question here is, are we Democrats or are we not Democrats? The public will give their view, and they will have, everybody watching your programme will have the same ability to change that result as we will have, because they'll have the same vote as we do. When the public have made their decision, it's up to the politicians to accept the will of the people. If they feel they cannot accept the will of the people and implement what the British public want, then clearly they can't serve in the government. That will be a decision for them to take after we've been through this process in the referendum, and it will be very passionate, and a lot of friendships will be tested in this, but in the end we'll have to come back together to govern the country. We will still be the majority party.
Just on those friendships being tested, what do you make of the likes of George Galloway supporting the result you want to see?
Well, I'm sure there'll be all sorts of people that wouldn't normally be my political friends or allies in that, and they'll have their own reasons for doing so. Actually, his reasons are diametrically opposed to mine.
They can't both be right. He thinks leaving the EU would turn Britain into a socialist paradise.
I think, I of course think that's completely wrong, because I think there's no chance of us electing Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. But let's park that for a moment. But on both sides, and people say, oh, how could you be in the same campaign as George Galloway and others, but the Prime Minister is going to have to link arms with Nicola Sturgeon and Jeremy Corbyn on that side of the argument,
that'll
which
be a
is
sight.
not a pretty picture, I have to say.
OK, Liam Fox, very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed, as ever.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.